r/askreddit, posted by Reddit user TheDashingMan. Paranormal believers of Reddit, what made you believe? Serious. My husband and I live in a 100-year-old house. It's always been a little creepy, like hearing people talk in another room and going in, and there's no one there. But a couple of years ago, we had two really good hauntings that totally convinced me of the paranormal. The first thing that happened when I was sleeping on the living room floor in the front of the TV because I hurt my back and was trying to get it to unkink. I woke up at 4 a.m. I heard the mantle clock chime 4 times. I'm sure I was awake because I watched TV for a few minutes. I heard my husband walk into the room right behind me, pick up the comforter, and spoon with me in his arms thrown over my waist. After a couple of minutes, it was like his arms weighed a ton, and he was throwing a lot of heat. Just about then, I heard my husband start snoring in the bedroom. I started freaking out. I was so freaking terrified. So I counted to 3, threw the cover off, and ran. I woke him up and we looked, but there was no one in the house. I know there was something there though. The second one, we were both asleep in the bedroom at about 4 a.m. again. My husband says he woke up to hear 2 little girls talking. He could hear that they were playing jacks. He could hear the ball bouncing and the metal sounds of jacks on the wood floor. One of the little girls said to the other one, "Watch this." And she goes, "Mama, Mama." And I sat straight up, still asleep, and said, "What, baby?" Once a mother, always a mother, right? The little girls laughed because it worked. So he kind of shook me awake, and I looked at him, then at the doorway where the little girls were. They looked real except their outlines were wavering, and they were almost black and white coloring. They saw us both looking and laughed. Then the older girl grabbed the little one's hand, and they walked right through the bedroom and disappeared. When I was younger, my mom used to invite random neighborhood children over for dinner and parties so they could eat. At my sister's birthday party, everyone was outside getting ready to hit the piñata. My father noticed the girls sitting inside, staring out the window at us. We have a large window beside the front door. He told me to go inside and ask her if she wanted to come out and join the party. I ran up the walkway, looking at her through the window as I went towards the door, and then as soon as I passed through, losing sight of her for a few seconds, she was gone. My dad thought she'd fallen. There's a couch in front of the window, so he thought she fell on the couch. I looked around for her, but I couldn't find her. So I told my dad. He helped me look for her, but still nothing. No one else saw her except me and my dad. My mom said she didn't recall inviting any girls with our description of her. We forgot about it until some years later, though I don't really know exactly how many. My dad and I were sitting in the living room, watching TV. From my dad's armchair, you can see into the kitchen, a little bit. Me and my dad were talking about the show we were watching when he suddenly got quiet. He said my name and motioned for me to come over to him. He told me to look at the microwave. I saw that girl's reflection in the microwave, exactly the same as before. I ran into the kitchen and my dad followed, but again, no one was there. We were both pretty spooked, so we went out for ice cream until my mom came home. I thought it was a neighborhood kid playing a prank on us the first time I saw her, but after the second time, seeing her in our kitchen, unchanged, made me start believing in ghosts. When I was 8, my friend Annie and I were at her house. It was over the summer, so everyone else had left for work or a meeting, so we were home alone. Mind you, Annie lives near a farm, so there is a field behind her house. Anyways, we were in her room, and her cat ran down the hall out of her grandparents' room, so we were very confused as he looked freaked out. We got up from the bed and went over to him. She picked him up and started petting him. He was very sketched out, but we didn't think anything of it. Before I continue, her mom's room is at the beginning of the hall, and her grandparents' room is at the end of the hall. Her mom and grandparents always leave the doors open because of the cats. In her grandparents' room, there's a mirror in the middle of the wall, so when you step out of my friend's room, or come down the hall, or stand in her mom's room at the door, you obviously see your reflection. Annie and I started to get hungry, so she decided to get a snack for us. She went to the kitchen and I stood with the cat in the hallway, just petting him as he laid on the floor in front of Annie's mom's room. I noticed the trim of a white dress go by from one end of her grandparents' room to the other. Annie came back and I had told her what has happened, and we went to get up to go to the living room, and down the hall, in her grandparents' mirror, we saw a tall woman in a bridal gown, no eyes, wide smile. Her head was tilted as she stood right behind us in the reflection of the mirror. She let out the most bone-chilling scream, and we booked it and headed to the basement to see if anyone had snuck down in there. We noticed no windows were broken or door handles. As we reached the doors to head to the garage area, we froze when we heard the heels coming down the stairs and the creepiest giggles ever. We got into the garage and ran for our lives. We stayed outside until someone came home, which wasn't until 3 in the afternoon. Annie's mom came home and we didn't even give her a chance to get out of her car. We began telling her what happened. She was freaked out a bit and told us the woman had always bothered her when she was our age. As she told us the story, we all had rushed inside because we heard a howl of laughter coming from the cornfield. The night after that was just as terrifying, as it was just myself in the middle of the night. It was around 4 in the morning and I had to pee badly, so I got up and went. I shut the door like anyone else probably would and did my business. As I was finishing, I heard scratching outside the door and thought it was just the cat. Annie's cats were literal crackheads at night. As I went to grab some toilet paper, I saw a human eye under the door peeking at me. I screamed and cried, her mom rushing in. I told her what happened, and she thought it'd be best if Annie and I slept with her that night. The weird thing is about the story, the woman came out of the blue. I was with Annie since kindergarten and we never experienced that stuff before. Even after that happened, and as we grew older, that woman never came around, as if she never existed. Annie and I never talk about it, but when someone brings it up, we look at each other and leave the room. It will forever send shivers down our spines. We're both 21 now. When I was about 14, I was playing PlayStation in the living room. At the time, the sofa faced directly in front of the TV. I was sitting at the very left edge of the sofa, with my arm on the rest. To be clear, there's a set of stairs behind me, but I never worry about anybody sneaking up on me, as they were such old wood that even the slightest step would make them creak unbearably. Needless to say, this led to me not being able to sneak out a lot as a teenager. Anyways, it was just me and my mother at home. I knew she was upstairs cleaning up whatever she was cleaning up, and I was down there playing the video game. My phone was on the edge of the armrest. I got a text message, so I paused my game quickly as I went to go grab my phone. As I went to grab the phone, I locked eyes with what looked like a little boy. He gave me a brief stare and gasped as he went back under the couch. I didn't freak out too much, because initially, I didn't get a good chance to process what I had just seen. Coming from the family I come from, I figured it was my mother trying to play a trick on me, maybe trying to scare me. I laughed nervously and called out, "Haha, real good one, Mom." When I didn't get an answer, I said, "Mom." And when she didn't answer again, I said it a little louder. From the upstairs, my mom said, "What's going on, honey?" That's when my blood ran cold. I got a shiver down my spine and I was really afraid that what I had just seen wasn't anything made any sense in my head. I asked for her to come down, and when she came down, she said I looked almost gray. I said, "Mom, can you look around the sofa? Is anyone there? Maybe the dog?" She looked, and there was nothing there. I went on to explain to her what happened. She was a little freaked out, but she said nothing was going to hurt me, everything was going to be okay. It was very easy for everybody in our family to acknowledge the paranormal. We had been plagued by paranormal events at that home, almost routinely. Everybody had a story, but this was the first time I was able to put a face to it. The little boy looked gray, dark sunken in eyes, almost like a bowl cut on his head. It might sound like I'm describing some movie character, but that's exactly what I saw. The funny thing is, I feel like he was just looking at me play the video game in excitement, but when he realized I could see him, the sheer shock made him jump under the couch and away from me. I don't know how to explain it, but I know that situation wasn't harmful, wasn't violent. However, There was another time where my brother, who shared the same room as me, was sleeping alone because I had left. We had some Xbox controllers in our room, and he said that he was sleeping one night and he heard someone touching the Xbox controller. He thought it was nothing until he heard the Xbox controller's distinct button clicking and movement of the joystick. He said that he turned to the wall and just prayed, said it wouldn't stop for at least 20 minutes. He didn't get a wink of sleep that night, and he said that felt extremely violent, extremely malevolent. I used to live in North Carolina, in a small town no one's ever heard of. I used to think about ghosts all the time, but only for fun. I never considered it any different from Santa or fairies. One night, my mom told me she was sending me to Bible summer camp, and my experiences were isolating and so negative that I had broken down because I really didn't want to go. I didn't know shit about what spirits could do or couldn't do, especially back then, and I wasn't one to pray at that age. So I decided to ask any spirit in my house for help once my parents had left. I called out, "Is anyone here? Can you help me, please?" Before I continue, I need to stress, I have lived in that house for about 10 years by that point. I was an abused kid too, so I taught myself to be very keen to every noise the house makes, naturally, or by the people living in it. I knew every creak by heart at that point. If someone was in the house, I would know. I would know who it was based on their walk. I for sure knew the difference of different creaks and different levels, the sound of which doors being open, etc. So after a while of calling out for help, I hear something, my parents' door unlocking from upstairs, opening and swinging shut. A pause, and I called out again, thinking my parents might still be home and maybe I made a mistake. I called again. "Hello? Is anyone home?" Another pause. Then I heard footsteps walk along the hall above me tentatively. They were light, like someone who weighed so little was walking barefoot. Almost a sound as a cat. My cat was outside though. These were distinctly human steps. No one was home. I called out one more time. "Hello?" The walking slowly made its way to the top of the stairs and paused, as if leering down from the top step. Something I would often do if there was a stranger in the house or if I was listening to the people downstairs. Then slowly, I heard this entity walk all the way down the steps and leisurely walk towards me down the hall. I saw a glimmer of light like a sunbeam catching the edge of the dress beneath the trees, and the footsteps stopped about a yard in front of me. I nervously tried to explain myself, but I felt a confusion and irritation from this thing. I didn't hear words or see much of anything, didn't know how to close the conversation. I just awkwardly walked away to watch TV, but I felt eyes on me that whole night. I think I just woke whatever it was up, and they were annoyed. But ever since then, I've been a believer, and I've had more unexplainable events happen there too, but not much after I moved out. Not me, but my parents. When I was 6, my mother was pregnant with my little sister. Being 37, she was already a much older woman to be having a baby. But that didn't stop my father and her for going on and continuing the pregnancy. At the end of the pregnancy, they were met with a very difficult task. At one of the last appointments before the birth, a doctor came in and said that the way that the cord had been wrapped around my sister's neck was very severe. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot that doctors could do. They said that they could save my mother, but unfortunately, my little sister probably would have died. They said they could also save the baby, but in turn, my mother could bleed out before they could make the proper adjustments, and my mother would be the one to die. I remember this scene so clearly, though at the time not having any knowledge of what was going on. My mother and father, just broken, very upset, hugging me and my other siblings, just giving us all the love in the world. The day of the birth came, and though I don't know the results of what my parents had chose, I think the option was to save my mother and in turn lose the baby. They were ready for the procedure. When a doctor came in and talked to my mother and my father, he told them he may be able to save the baby and my mother's life, but he would have to act fast. Long story short, the operation was a success. My mother recovered, and my little sister was born, healthy. My parents were filled with joy that a doctor would come in and save the life of my sister. The thing is, when they asked for the doctor, the entire staff acted as if that doctor had never existed. They said that doctor didn't work in this hospital, and as a matter of fact, no one of that description, name, had ever worked here. For context, it was a very small hospital in an area nobody really knows. All the nurses swear that the doctor who treated my mother was a female doctor that my mother had never had any contact with. My parents don't understand what happened, but they're grateful. Ever since then, my parents believe that there's some sort of spirit looking out for my little sister. And for her sake, I hope so, in this crazy world.